Welcome to the Gray Area Podcast live. It is December 22nd, 2023. It is Friends Friday on the Gray Area. Appreciate you joining me. However, and wherever you may be listening to the podcast, you can download the podcast on Apple Podcast, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast for free. You can also watch this streaming on my YouTube channel at Kevin Gray Sports, and you can also subscribe to the channel by hitting that subscribe button and get notifications, of course, when we go live here on the show. So excited. It's the Christmas holiday. It's the general holidays, and we appreciate you taking some time and stopping down with us here on the show today. You can find me on Twitter at Kevin Gray Sports. As I mentioned, it is Friends Friday, and it also happens to be my birthday. So I couldn't think of anyone better to do Friends Friday with on my birthday than to spend some time with my guy, my brother, Reginald Adetula, host of the Get Right on 105.3 The Fan. Reg, what's going on?
Not much. Happy birthday, my man. We gotta retire the Teddy U36. We gotta retire that at this point. It's done with.
Yep, I guess we have to finally let it go. And that was another reason I said if anybody was going to ring in my birthday and officially retire the U36, it had to be you, and no one else could do that. So I appreciate you stopping down with me on this Friday to hang out and just rap a little bit, man. How you doing?
Doing. I'm doing. Yeah, I'm doing. Right. Christmas coming. So look, man, we about to turn over this year. All those things. I'm doing. That's
you got.
You know me though, like I don't, my answer to that question is rarely anything particularly, I don't know, cheery per se. I always found that question interesting in the ways that like our American societal norms have built that, where it's just like, how are you doing? And everybody's like kind of conditioned to say good, even if you're not. And so
I've learned how to say well. I've learned how to say if I'm doing well to actually say that as an actual state of condition versus just a general. I'm fine. I'm good. Like I've tried to assign some actual general actual emotion or feeling to how I'm actually doing in that particular moment in that way.
Right. So I'm making it is one that comes through for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm living. Because sometimes look, that's good enough, right? We here.
But yeah, especially this time. Are there any particular traditions in the Adetula family that you're looking most forward to during this time of year, getting a chance to spend some time with some family and some friends in that way?
It's funny because I still don't have plans like particularly solidified for Christmas. Like I imagine it probably ends up being that I just go drive and spend some time with the folks. But like, yeah, it's been weird, I guess, because probably for the last, I don't know, 7-8 years, I haven't really had particular like traditions. And I guess my family is not necessarily traditional in that way. Like there's some things that we'll get together and do, and mom's likes making a ham from time to time, but it hasn't been consistent. There's been times I can think of where we went and spent Christmas just hanging out with some family friends, or there's been times where working in this business, in this radio thing, right? Like so Christmas isn't all that traditional for me in that way. It just ends up being kind of a time of year where people kind of have that jolliness or whatever. And I guess there's also like the other side of it where people have some, depression and things of that nature, but just kind of it just is what it is, right? Whatever we find to do. And ultimately the thing that I will never look down at, day off, right? Like it's day off. And so hallelujah for a day off. And we'll find ways to enjoy day or weeks, like depending on some folks and in the businesses that you're in, some folks just accrue PTO, got to take them off. And now you're done for the year. Congratulations.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to make sure that I remember those who don't necessarily get to have the time off, whether they be, hospital workers or whatever the case may be, who work literally, it feels like every single day of the year, to stop down and be like, hey, we appreciate y'all. Thank y'all. Because for a lot of us, we get to be able to spend some of those holidays away with family and friends, but some don't get to do that. And it's always a weird time of the year because, it's a general happy feeling when it comes to Thanksgiving or Christmas or whatever you choose to celebrate. For some though, it's a little more difficult. So trying to keep and remember those things is particularly on my mind now that, try to move that way.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, obviously, always being as caring or as emotionally diligent. I guess that's not the right word, but it's fine. It's only noon. I'm still getting revved up. But yeah, no. I mean, obviously, these times are oftentimes spent with family, and so for a lot of folks, it harkens to family that maybe it's not there, and all sorts of different things. So, always try and be emotionally intelligent to those things, but also, find some good in there, man. If you can't find some good on a holiday, then it's real tough.
My bad. I had to plug in my computer before it died. So when it
you was just gonna leave me in the gray area.
No. You were just fine. I was like, he's doing it. I got a half second to do it. I'm gonna plug it in, and I got it. I was able.
I love how by the seat of the pants this is, because I kind of wish you hadn't plugged it in, because I would have loved to just see you go.
That'd have
been hilarious.
See, I had plenty of battery, but I had to make sure. I was like, I can't allow it to not, be charged with, because I wasn't gonna let anything happen to this show. But look, when it comes to this time of the year, obviously with friends and family, that kind of thing, is also our favorite pastime, or one of our favorite pastimes, and that's hoops. And of course, we got Christmas Day hoops with the Mavericks taking on, the Phoenix Suns. You've got other games as well. I can't remember the entire lineup. That's pretty bad, because I covered the NBA in that way, so I should know all the games that day.
Pull the curtain behind you. You started talking about Christmas, and I was like, let me pull up this phone right quick and see what games there are.
Look, I'm saying, let me look at my tablet here and try to get these Christmas Day games, because I can't remember all of them. But even before we get there, you watch and love the NBA just as much as I do, if not more. Hey man, what's up with these Mavericks over the last 17 games, like 8-9 in the last 17 games? They lost the last 2 to Denver on Monday, then they lose to the Clippers on Wednesday. Like, what's going on with them right now?
I mean, the one thing that really jumps out is they hurt. Right, like this thing is not really built to operate with less than the full capacity of players, and especially not when one of your stars is missing and one of your best defensive player is missing. And so, this isn't really built to withstand that. And that's something that's kind of been troubling my spirit in a way, right? Thinking about the ways in which Kyrie Irving, his thing was, hey man, he don't show up to work. Now there's various reasons why he don't show up to work, and one of those things was, that thing. But then another one of those things is that he gets hurt a little bit, and I don't try and like use that as a cudgel against him as like just a human being, but like it is something that you have to consider. Is like Kyrie Irving is no spring chicken. That dude is 31 at this point, and he's had quite a few seasons where you've missed a good amount of time to games to injury. And so that's tough, because you need him to be there. And then on top of that, you add missing Derek Lively, who is not only like your best defensive player, like it works in a significantly different way with him. Something that I've been thinking about is like, hey, you already had him on like an advanced track, right? The idea was like, hey, you need him to develop with the capital D, right? Like you need him to get there to a point where you want to be able to depend on a 19-year-old in his very first postseason, should you be able to get there, right? And so you need to pack in all the games possible, except whoops, sprained ankle, and now you're missing what, a couple of weeks now of development time. And look, I mean, maybe in the grand scheme of things, that's minimal, but the margins are so thin with this team. And I know this year is kind of like a gap year already, but if you wanted to get anything, or if you want to get anything done, because I'm not trying to like write this off already, but this is all time that you need. So I think largely like the injuries is what gets me. Outside of that, is just like, how sustainable is shooting, right? Like this is and then
that's for a team that depends on the three the way that the Mavericks do.
And then the other side of that is, can you get some buckets at the paint? Because to this point, that's not been the bag. So the bag has been entirely like live or die by the three. And I've talked about it with you for a long time, or many times, is like the misnomer about that first, 2015 Golden State Warriors team, is that all they did was shoot threes. Now they got to the hoop, they got to the rack a lot, and so that kind of balances out. This team only has the 3-point shooting, and so it's cool when Luka's out here getting Derrick Jones Jr. open shots and he's knocking them down. It's cool when Grant Williams starts hot from three. It's cool even getting Dante Exum shots, but when those instances of them going cold happens, okay, what else you got, right? Who else can get to the rack? And even when Kyrie's healthy, Kyrie is a difficult shot taker. And that's all cool and fine when it's like it's going in because like, yo, look at how crazy difficult these shots are. But when it's not, it's like, hey, how about we take some easier shots, maybe?
Can we make this a little easier on ourselves, please? That'd be great.
And so, yeah, I think all those things kind of pile together to make this team what they are. And ultimately, like, to be fair, they're still what, 6 in the West right now?
6 in the West right now, yeah.
So a lot of that is still a testament to just how good any team is. The floor that is on a team when you have a top 5 player in the league, and Luka Doncic is indeed that. So this still remains a team that is like figuring some things out. Which players do you think you can use in a championship scenario, and kind of how these pieces fit together? But right this moment, you can't answer none of those because all these dudes is hurt.
All of them are hurt. And the one that is the most important is like, look, man, I need to sit down for a second because I'm tired of carrying this franchise on my entire back so far this year, averaging over 32 a game, while dishing nearly 10 assists a game. Like, I'm tired. And Luka's going to miss the game, on Friday against the Rockets. We'll see when he comes back, against the Spurs on Saturday, which I imagine he comes back. And then, of course, you got the Christmas Day game against Phoenix. So I imagine he'll be
back.
Which
Adam Silver told y'all better, everybody show up.
Hey, everybody show up. Okay.
National TV, everybody show up.
Because here's the thing. The NFL was like, hey, this is actually our day because Christmas just happens to fall on a Monday. We normally play games on Monday.
No, they normally play game on Monday. They wild. You see that? They got the full slate.
They got all the times. Yes.
Or, late afternoon, night game. I was like, y'all wilding for that. Like, I get it. Technically, a Monday is your game, is your day game. Like, I get it, right? Y'all not necessarily going out of your way, but you're going out of your way and you're being real jerks about this.
And they got the nerve to probably put the best game of the season up to date on Monday night with the Ravens and the 49ers to end the day on Christmas night in that way.
Yeah, this might dictate the way that I move on Christmas. I might be at the crib because I need multiple TVs, right? Like, I need to be able to watch both of those games at once, right? I need to be able to watch the Mavs for obvious reason, but I also really, really need to watch this game. Lamar Jackson and the Ravens versus the Niners, Christian McCaffrey, all them. Yeah, no, I need to see this injected directly into my veins.
I love the audacity, though, the NFL, like, we don't give a damn about the NBA. Normally, this is the unofficial, welcoming to the rest of the world when it comes to the NBA season with Christmas Day. The NFL was like, nah, this is actually still our season, and we're not only going to have one game, we're going to have 3 games to prove to you the might of the NFL and try to stomp you out on what is traditionally your day when it comes to the rest of the viewing world for the National Basketball Association. Roger Goodell and the NFL is like, nope, we don't care. We don't care.
Yeah, they getting real hogs to the slider, right? Not to sound like Mark Cuban. And look, some of that
we're still waiting on that, by the way, Mr. Cuban. We're still waiting on that, by the way.
A lot of that is hating for me. Like, this is just I typically like this holiday to be basketball related, and now you're making me watch football, right? Like, this is just me hating. However, they're giving us Raiders Chiefs. You interested in that one?
No.
All right. They're giving us Giants Eagles, which I get. Look, Cowboys ties, sure, but like actually watching that, you interested in that, right? Like, some of this is just like y'all keep spinning this out. In fact, like, look, let's take it here if you don't mind.
Okay.
I've now stolen the reins on this show. You're very.
This is what I was waiting for. Yes. Yes.
Hey, man. Is the NFL like the hogs to the slaughter thing? Right, might really be happening in some way because you saw the thing about them doing the double Monday night like more consistently next year and into the future. And I'm like,
which is cool if you stagger the games. If you stagger the games, okay, fine.
No, it's not. Like, for me at least, the whole idea of prime time is that there is a game in focus. You got 2 of these, you're defeating that purpose. And have you noticed just how many times we get to Sunday and the afternoon slate or like the 12 o'clock slate is kind of boo-boo? Right, like, have you noticed?
Yep.
And you're thinking this out because you keep moving all these games to all different places. And like,
because the NFL's realizing y'all will watch this football no matter what. You'll watch it on Monday, you'll watch it on Saturday. Hell, we introduced Black Friday football, and y'all was stopping down and watching. What was that? The Dolphins and the Jets that day, or something like that. Y'all
felt like a make good. That felt like a make good. Amazon was like, we pay for Thursdays, and y'all already have Thanksgiving, so we gonna leave here with something, right?
That's
Shout
right. That's right. I'm gonna leave here with something. I'm gonna leave here with something. And look, and they got Black Friday football now.
And the worst part about it is that they will not suffer any consequences for any of this, right? Like,
none.
Everything will continue to roll, but please. Like, for my personal, like, I would like to be able to watch the primetime games, and I would like to have like a slate that's actually good. And this is like the worst year to do it because I don't know about you, but this has felt like a lot more mid than usual. And mid is probably nice because maybe it's less than mid, right? Mid implies some level of midline. There's been a lot of games that I'm just like, this is not good.
the NFL is answering the call for what people have wanted. We want more teams, quote unquote, more competitive, more drama as the season goes on, many more teams still in it in terms of the playoff race, which means the last 3 weeks of the regular season means something, which means, oh, that's right, y'all gonna watch more of these games because your team actually still has a chance to still make the playoffs. So everybody wins. More teams competitive, more eyeballs on the television, more fan engagement. Everybody wins in that scenario.
Parity. Right?
Parody, yes.
Parody.
Yes, that's what it is. Roger Goodell's happy. He's getting lots and lots of money to watch you and I watch his product every single, Sunday, Monday, Thursday, now Saturday.
Yeah, and Saturday.
And on the occasional Friday now at this point.
Yeah, man, this is...
I love how fatigued you are at the NFL for making you watch their product as many times as they do while trying to keep up with everything else at the same
I have no option. That's the I mean, obviously I work in this business, right? I gotta have something to tell you about these things.
Yes.
So I really have no option. But ultimately, like, it's tough because they can't keep getting away with this. The problem is they absolutely can. And so, like, as many criticisms as I can
testing
bring,
the boundaries of it too, and keep testing my boundaries on it as well. Yes.
And you know what keeps happening? The cash money machine keep going burr, right? Like, it just keeps printing money. And this is one of the reasons why a lot of times people are like real deferential to all these owners, particularly in football. Like, oh, well, they keep making money. I was like, you realize you don't have to be smart. I was about to say very smart, but you don't have to be smart at all to make money in this. Y'all don't. And this is funny, right? Like, the cognitive dissonance of this, where people will believe kind of hey, man, you got money, you got to be smart. But then we'll actively look at folks like Woody Johnson, Jim Irsay, right? Like, all these different folks be like, look at this clown, look at this idiot. And then at the same time be like, but he got money, so he got to have something right. Like, no, he doesn't.
No. Just because my man was a hedge fund guy over here, David Tepper, doesn't mean he knows how to run a football team and how to put one together when it comes to like this whole people person part of it. He doesn't know how to do any of that, it feels like.
Yeah. I forgot to name David Tepper, but good job bringing him back around. Like,
David Tepper, he did that to himself. Look, I saw a report that apparently Ben Johnson, and good for him if he's actually going to be doing this, the offensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions, that the asking price for him, if he were to even consider going to Carolina, would be at minimum $15 million a season.
Yeah,
which I say, good for him.
Didn't he turn them down last offseason?
Yeah, I think he turned them down once already. Yes.
That is a man that understands the concept of all money ain't good money. Like,
if you want me really bad, you're going to pay me for my services. And this time I'm coming back for more than the first time, because it looks like you need me much more than I need you in Ben Johnson's case.
Yeah, he's a hot commodity too.
Yes.
Right. Like, he might be name number one when it comes to kind of, dudes, first time head coaches, that people want. He's analytically inclined, good play caller, all those things. Yeah, why would I go and make sure that my head coaching record is in the negative by going to Carolina? That doesn't sound like a smart way to play this. And so, yeah, if you're going to do that, you have to make sure you hit for your entire lick right now. I'm surprised he stopped at 15. Right? Like, why not
let's test the hedge fund guy, see how willing he's going to go deep into his pockets to bring me to his organization.
Right. And David Tepper already has demonstrated like a proclivity for just like rash acting. Right. He came in as an owner, immediately seemed like the dude who just, was jittery.
Yes.
You know what I mean? He's already fired how many? 3 head coaches already? It's like, I come in and you watched Coming to America when Semi goes to the the Wells Fargo, or not the Wells Fargo, but just to get some money, right? He goes to get some money. And she's like, why don't we make it a cool $1 million? Like, at this point, I'm like, why don't we make it a cool $100 million? See how far we can push this. Go ahead and hit for your lick. Because one thing I'm gonna tell you, as soon as you leave that job in Carolina, your record will be bad. And look, he's white, right? He might be able to get the retread thing going, but he'll
be all right. Yeah, he'll be all right.
You can't guarantee that. So go ahead and hit for that entire lick, right?
Look, he fixed Jared Goff, quote unquote. Like, you're gonna be okay for a while.
Did he fix Jared Goff?
Jared Goff he's been playing.
This is the thing about Jared Goff. Jared Goff played good football under Sean McVay. He just wasn't good enough to get them as far as they wanted to. And ultimately, remember, like, they did go to a Super Bowl with him. They
did.
The problem,
but then they were still like, we need another guy to come in and do what you can't do.
You need very specific circumstances, which is a good offensive line and some play action. to get things popping with him. Maybe a good running back, although, some people will tell you that running backs don't matter per se. All right.
I've heard that before.
We don't need to get into that. But like, he needs those very specific situations. And in those situations, he's a damn good quarterback. You take him out of those situations, and he is a gremlin that got wet. It's crazy how that happens.
And then Ben Johnson's like, well, I'm gonna come in and fix him. And guess what? He's
by getting a good offensive line.
Exactly.
Play action. He's like, I know the rest.
We're gonna sign and draft 100 running backs. Shout out to Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery in Detroit. And next, there you go. You're actually playing some good football for the fighting by the kneecaps of Detroit. By the way, low key defensive, they are not good. They are not good right now.
They weren't good last year either. That was the crazy thing, is that they came out and looked like they figured something out. It was like, what? And apparently smoke and mirrors, guys. Smoke and mirrors.
Well, hey, I mean,
it's one of the things actually that I've been thinking about the last week or so, is just how much of the stuff, like, because of the way that all this media is trained on the NFL, and we need so much content. But it's such a small sample size sport. We just be grabbing on to anything and running with it. You know how many times we've had like wild switches in opinion throughout the course of the season, and really it's just like, hey, we finally got enough of a sample size to actually know what was happening. But the problem is we got to say something all this time, right? And ultimately, we come back to, all right, this team isn't good, even though we thought they were pretty good because they had this little run. And that team actually is good, even though they had this time down. Maybe it was just an injury, or maybe just something was shaking weird. Or like, these things are so funny that to like sit back afterwards. And I'm not saying this as like someone on the outside of this. I'm a part of this too. I'm just laughing at the entitlement.
You are actively part of this machine right now.
Like, I'm sitting here laughing at myself. Like, why did I do that? Like, I know this. I've talked about this before. And yet there I am, week 3. Like, oh man, this is crazy. Can you see what's happening here? And ultimately, nope, smoke and mirrors.
This is why folks like myself get so upset with the Cowboys and the week-to-week swings that come with not only covering this team, but just watching this team from a fan perspective. Because what was the conversation coming out of the game against Buffalo? Can't win on the road.
That's right.
They can't beat good teams.
They
still find a way to lose games that matter most. And then we look around, it's like, oh, wait a minute. It was just 1 week, and a team like San Francisco, shout out to them playing Baltimore on Monday night. Oh, that's a team that also lost to a team like the Cleveland Browns. The Chiefs have lost games to teams that they shouldn't have lost to. Every one of these teams that are quote-unquote good have lost games that they should not have lost to, but it's such a reactionary 1 week drama when it comes to every NFL team, and it's heightened by 100 when it comes to the Cowboys, something we know a little bit about here in this market, that it just feels like Monday through Wednesday, you get the overreaction, overbearing. Yeah. What's the hottest thing I could say about this particular team based off what happened just a couple of days ago? And then by the time you get to Thursday, it's like, well, okay, let's get back to the rationale and calm down and get ready for this next game coming up on the following weekend.
And far be it for me to like, woe is me, folks in media, right? Like, this gig isn't nearly as difficult as many other gigs in there. I like to say it's not digging ditches by any means. But there is something to be said for like the pressure, I guess, for lack of a better word, that you feel from like the fan base and fans who are just, like out here and interacting. And thank you for interacting. It's always good because, look, it's good to hear who you're talking to. Otherwise, it's a one-sided conversation. And we spent many decades doing that. It's kind of nice having a little bit more of a two-way street in that regard. But I would be lying if I said that, like, folks being like, yo, why are you not, what's happening here? Why are you not acknowledging this? Why are you, like, if that does not shape the way that this goes in some ways. And so I think some of that also pushes you to the point where you're like, you know what? They are a fraud, right? Like, this person is a fraud or whatever. And then you come back, you're like, yeah, that probably was a little bit further than I needed. That's a little much.
I will say, though, one of those teams in terms of the Cowboys and who we talk about, the Eagles, you talking about fraudulent. Oh, boy, they're looking real fraudulent right now based off what happened against, what was it? Oh, that's right, the Seahawks on Monday night. Shout out to Drew Lock and Geno Smith out here completing their stories in the way that they're doing it right now, because Drew Lock was able to help the Seahawks get the win. And we're looking around at the Eagles, and help me out. Because I wasn't ready to take it all the way there with Philadelphia in that way, because, I tried to put some respect on the idea. Hey, that team did just play in the Super Bowl and played an incredible football game against the Kansas City Chiefs. Hey, man, they're looking real 2022 Minnesota Vikings with all the getting away with it that they're doing right now. And I don't know if they're actually good or they're just on the other end of like actually winning these games, these close games that they may not have had actually any business winning so far this year.
Here's been my problem with that particular one, because I felt very strongly about like the Vikings of that year. Right? I was like, yo, this is not nearly as good as what we're trying to pretend it is. And maybe the year before or 2 years before, I can't remember, when the Steelers started 11-0, that one drove me up a wall. I was like, how do y'all not see this? This is terrible. The thing that's different for me is like the Vikings had no business being good, but people were just like, well, there's the record, right?
Yeah.
The Eagles have largely the record, but they also have the pieces, right? And so, like, in theory, they should be good. They're just not, right? Like, that's the tough part about it.
They got a really good defensive line. They theoretically have a good quarterback. They've got some really good receivers. Secondary is not great, but still has some guys that you know of. Like, they should be a pretty good football team.
Pieces are there, right? Even then, like, you have a lot of continuity on this. It's not like they changed a ton. Obviously, year to year, every football team changes in the NFL. It's part of like the salary cap and all these things. But like year to year, there's a lot of continuity, and so you've seen them hit the buttons that work before. So, like, in theory, there should be some answers in stock, right? The institutional knowledge that should be there. Although that's when you go to the difference in coordinators and stuff, and maybe that factors in. But ultimately, like, the capacity for being good is there. The case, and they're not living up to that. And so, in some ways, you go, no, in theory, right? And they have the capacity to be good. Except they're just not, right? Like, ultimately, and at some point in the season, you switch from what the theoretical is, and like they have the possibility, and at some point you're just like, okay, but this is what we're seeing. And I think that might be the flip that ultimately we're doing with the Eagles, is like, all right, in theory, but in practice at this point, it's not looked good. And so, what am I supposed to do with that? And the thing that really pisses me off about this ultimately is that in football, and just in this industry in general, but in particularly with football, because again, such a small sample size, for me at least, as soon as I get comfortable with like, all right, I feel like I've seen enough, I can say this. That's when they come out and make you look stupid, right? Like, tell me that if we get out here and we're like, all right, the Eagles are actually not any good, and that they don't just figure it out and then get out here throwing the ball to A.J. Brown, throwing the ball to Devontae Smith, right? Springing Kenneth Gainwell, right? And all the Jalen Carter in people's backfields, right? Like, tell me that doesn't happen as soon as we go all in on, they're actually bad.
As soon as I feel like I got a nice informed opinion on how I want to talk about this team going forward, nope. All the questions get answered in a different way, and all of a sudden we got to ask and find out different answers to different questions that we didn't even know we had based off of what we had seen from the previous maybe 3 or 4 weeks of watching a team. And look, things got to be, how bad do things have to be if you're Philadelphia? If you looked around and said, hey, Sean Desai, we thought you were doing a good job early on this year. Hey, but there's another guy that we want to try out over here who's actually done some of this. We feel like could do a little bit better than you. Oh, that guy happens to be Matt Patricia. Like, how bad does he's got to be defensively that you look around and say, hey, Matt, you want to come over here and try to fix this? Because defensively right now, we're not getting where we are supposed to be based on some of the personnel that we have here. I just found that to be completely hilarious that first of all, I didn't even know Matt Patricia was on the staff, number one. And number two, he showed up and was like, hey, guys, I'll be the DC. No problem. I can handle that.
I mean, technically, to be fair, in Matt Patricia's defense, which is words that I probably shouldn't say.
I'm about to say, I don't know if you ever would want to utter those words out loud, but here we are.
He has DC'd and coordinated really good defenses. Now, of course, those were in New England, and we've seen a lot of instances where someone has coordinated a good thing and then gone away and not done that. Because, hey, Belichick tree looking kind of scraggly.
Most overrated thing in the National Football League, the Bill Belichick coaching tree.
Except for Mike Vrabel, who might not even technically could count as being on that tree, and then also Brian Flores, who that thing.
Flores,
right?
Flores is good. We're good with Brian Flores here. We're good with that. Yeah,
right. All the other stuff. Yeah. But the point being, like, Matt Patricia has called a good defense before. The problem for me is just like, all of this reeks of an air of desperation from the Eagles that you would not expect the way that they kick it. And so it just like they are grasping for anything. And that's got to be a tough place to be. I got to admit. What is that, a 10-win team? It's just like the sky is falling.
Yes. Ooh, and that's particularly in the case of Philadelphia, because they live and die by everything that happens on a day-to-day basis with their football team, baseball team, and in some ways their basketball team. By the way, Joel Embiid, he's so good right now. I just had to throw that in there. Joel Embiid is so damn good right now.
Didn't he put up 50 relatively recently?
Bro, he just had 51 the other night. 51. And I got mad because, and I love the way that we're doing this because this is how I intended it to go. I was looking at the Tim Bontemps. You know, he does his straw poll for the MVP.
Haven't seen
so
that
far.
Yet. I mean, I saw that it came through. I haven't read it yet.
Well, spoiler alert: Joel Embiid's number 1.
Okay.
Guess who's number 5? I'm gonna skip 2 through 4 because you could probably guess some of the names at 2 through 4. But guess who's at number 5 so far?
Sorry, I'm thinking.
You don't have to. Don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Luka's at 5.
Isn't that where Luka perpetually is? Like that's we were talking about this on the Get Right this week. Is this year the year where he actually has a legitimate candidacy? Because for like the last 3 years, we come into a season with Luka Doncic. He's on the short list for MVP because he's going to put up the stats. He's really good. Everybody understands this. And ultimately, you get to the end of the season, he's not an actual real contender for this. And it's starting to feel like this is going to be another year where he's not an actual real contender for this.
Okay, so but it's not a function of his play because you look at the numbers he's putting up. He's putting up career numbers, points wise, 3-point percentage. He's shooting nearly 38% from 3. Like he's putting up incredibly insane numbers.
Right.
But you look at the team record. I mean, they're 6th in the West right now. But some of the guys that were in front of him, obviously, Joel Embiid was at number 1. Nikola Jokic, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was sitting there at 4 based on the writers so far and how they feel about the MVP voting. I just thought it was a little disrespectful. Giannis was there, completing the top 5. As far as it was, Embiid, Jokic, Giannis, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and Luka were the top 5 as far as the MVP straw poll right now. But I just find it a little bit disrespectful that a dude is averaging nearly 33 a game, shooting nearly 38% from 3, shooting a career best at the free throw line right now, shooting nearly 78, 79% from the free throw line, and doing all the things that Luka Doncic does on a single night to find that dude only 5th in the MVP voting. I don't know if it speaks more to just the wild amount of talent at the very top of the NBA or a little bit of disrespect when it comes to Luka and what he's actually having to do every single night for this basketball team.
Well, some of this, and look, this isn't going to be the most fun part of this. Apologize to Mavs fans. Some of this is like the conversation that is kind of nebulously and narratively talked about as winning basketball. And you would say, look at all these stats. Like he's playing winning basketball. The tough part about it is that you go back, you look at win shares, and win shares are like, basically, is a way to try and, attribute a player's offense, defense, playing time, all those things into a single metric, almost like WAR in baseball. And you look at the win shares per 48, which obviously you do it per 48 to try and like level the playing field depending on different people's playing time and all that. And this, KG, that these things, win shares per 48 correlates pretty nicely to your impact and particularly MVP cases. Luka Doncic isn't top 10 last time I checked, which I believe was Tuesday. As of Tuesday, he was 11th in win shares per 48. And all them dudes that
Ooh,
and so, again, this is not the end-all be-all by any means.
Right.
That does go to show you, hey, man, the winning basketball portion of this is not quite there in the ways that it feels like it's there. And it's tough because we're in an era of basketball where everybody's putting up ridiculous numbers. Everybody's going, like, everything is juiced to a certain way. And some of that is like the Luka Doncic, the Jason Tatum, the James Harden of this all, where your primary playmaker is also your best player, and the ball is just in their hands. And that kind of, it makes all of this more efficient. And another thing with the Luka Doncic thing is they've had he in particular has had weird on-off splits, right? Where like his numbers on are not all that high. And then when he comes off, it kind of even at some points has gotten better at times. And like, that's nonsensical, right? Like that's not something that we can really believe in. I think in a big way is that you're better off with Luka Doncic not on the floor. However, like those things are telling you something in person. And so the tough part about it is he's still incredibly good. 11th in the league is really good. But you also have other players like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander who have an incredible season, right? Kawhi Leonard at this moment is playing incredible. He's not even in that conversation when we start talking about Joel Embiid killing things. When we talk about Giannis, obviously, is always going to be involved in this. But when you talk about Jokic and the ways in which he'll be having bad games and they're still getting wins, right? Because of his impact, playmaking and all those things, right?
Jokic
and his
had 9 points on Monday against the Mavericks and they won going away.
Yeah. What was that? 26. 26.
Yes.
And of course, again, that speaks to the roster around him. But some of this is also like the impact that he has. And I don't mean that to denigrate Luka, because Luka is clearly an incredible player, but there's still some things there. And that's the tough part, is that it still feels like he's kind of second class in that player conversation, even though he's an incredible player, and that's undeniable.
Yeah, and I think part of that speaks to, at least for me, in listening and understanding how this thing goes. While the MVP is definitely an individual award, when you look at how these things are given out, your team around you has got to be really, really good, because there is no reason why a guy putting up the kind of numbers that Luka Doncic has should be sitting there fifth in the MVP voting. But when you look at the team around him and the record that they have so far through 27 games, it speaks to how good the rest of your guys have to be around you and what kind of winning basketball that you're doing for this to drive more of your narrative, quote unquote, when it comes to being an MVP candidate. Because on its surface, Luka should probably be the number one, if worse, number two MVP candidate behind Joel Embiid, based off of the numbers that he's putting up so far this year. I mean, Joel Embiid is putting up absurd numbers at the center position based on what he's doing.
The offensive numbers.
Yeah.
He's putting up.
I mean, again, no one's ever going to accuse Luka of being a great defensive player. That's where things like Giannis, that's why it's unfair for Giannis, because Giannis is always going to be arguably the best two-way player in the league because of how well he plays defensively every single night and what he does from a, block shot, rebounding, like all the things he does defensively, which is all right, cool. You got it, Giannis there. You got that.
And you've seen Luka get more involved defensively again. I don't mean this as like a full indictment of him, but Joel playing defense has been something else, right? And you can say that about other players as well, is that the defensive impact is just a different level.
Which Jokic doesn't do. Jokic don't play defense.
Yeah. I mean, that's fair. That's fair. It's just,
but again, his team success is so much better than Luka's team success. And for a while, obviously, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but that team, obviously, they're much better now and playing really good, basketball at that point. Like, it just shows you how much your team has to be good around you or that push for you to be a legitimate MVP candidate stands to be. Because otherwise, I feel like Luka should at minimum be the number two. But hey, man, your team's sixth in the West right now. But again, okay, real quick.
Yeah.
This is also why I don't understand how MVP voting goes, because remember that one time when Russell Westbrook averaged a triple-double, but his team, what was it? Did they finish, sixth or seventh in the West? Or
something like that. Something like that. I remember it was seventh.
Jokic got an MVP a couple of years ago when he carried the Nuggets to, a sixth seed in the West. Like, how this goes and how we assign value, to me, is very, very arbitrary based off of how we want to look at a particular player and his quote-unquote value to a team based off of that.
Yeah, look, the name of that award skews this all in a different way, because then every year we have the same conversation about value, knowing damn well value is not a part of this, right? Like, it's
very subjective.
We know that that's not the metric. I don't know why we still have that conversation, but the metric is very inexact, and year to year it shifts on the things that we want, in some ways just because of the players that are there and the ways that we have to find ways to differentiate them.
Last year was voter fatigue, because I feel like Joel Embiid closed the season well to win the MVP last year.
Yes, we got some narrative help when Nikola Jokic had a little bit of a tough stretch when Joel Embiid decided to go God mode right quick.
But who wound up winning the NBA championship? Who had one of the greatest playoff runs that we've ever seen in NBA history?
And who led in win shares per 48?
Jokic.
Yeah,
exactly. So MVP, it's such an arbitrary and subjective way that we go about it. It's just, I want to find some consistency, but I guess we can introduce people into this. That's how it goes, I guess.
The conversation is what gets the people going, dog.
Hey,
it's what gets
content.
the people going.
It's the Gray Area Live podcast by guest Reginald Adetula. It is Friends Friday here on the Gray Area. I'm resetting for the folks here just joining us on YouTube. Not necessarily for the podcast folks. They can just listen to it and keep going. Sticking with the NBA, because we've always had fascinating discussions around the league, but particularly around this player. And he's back, and he's come back with a vengeance, because his team started 6-19 without him, and then all of a sudden he shows back up. Oh, we're having fun again, and we're hitting game winners, and we're beating teams like the Indiana Pacers who score a bazillion points every single night. Running teams out the gym.
I forgot to text you. I saw that. I was like, yo.
John Morant's back. Now, here's what I find interesting. And I want to hear your perspective on this, because after he hit the game winner against the Pelicans the other night, one of the things he ran out of the tunnel saying, I'm keeping receipts. And we're like, hey, dog, the reason why your team is not good is because you decided to act a fool and a nut and you wasn't around to help your team win games. And you talking about you keeping receipts. Receipts on what? We got the receipts on you because you was out here doing all this silly stuff.
Yeah. He was dry snitching in a way, being on this live. Which allow me to divert the conversation again. You know how this goes.
Yes.
I really don't get and this is where I'm starting to feel like, am I an old now? I'm 31 years old. I'm not actually old. I understand that. But
oh wow,
am I an old now? You're not an old neither. Well, why are you getting defensive?
Because my wife is assigned old to me now that I turned 37 today.
What does she know?
She knows
how to make some real good red beans rice. I'll tell you that. But no, it's like I don't understand. Well, okay, technically I understand the utility of live, but I don't get it. Right? I don't get like the idea of going live, especially when you have something to lose. Like, what do you get there that you cannot get in recording it and then putting it up when you need to? You know what I mean? Like, it just feels like there's more to lose than there is to gain on this.
Yes.
And so, the job thing there. But hey man, returning back, I think that the receipts thing for him was more, there was folks that were trying to temper the conversation on, is he gonna be as good when he gets back? Like, the idea is he gonna need some time. And for him, he's like, nah, brother, we're back in full effect. And I got receipts on all y'all folks that thought it wouldn't be that. Now, that perspective on it is kind of funny because usually those folks are looking out for you, dog. We're trying to make sure the block's not too hot, just in case it looks a little funny. Give you a little run up. But the thing that is wonderful about that, and this ties into Zion as well. I was talking about this on the air this week, is that we get people away from the game, or they're not in our direct vision for a little bit. And some of this is because there's just so many good players. We be forgetting just how good people are. Like the Zion thing. People have gotten to the place where we just making all these jokes, and rightfully so. He's brought a lot of that upon himself. Except you get a chance to actually watch him when he's actually like doing the Zion things, and you're like, oh my God. Like, I remember
he's so good.
I remember why we thought he was going to like eat the entire league alive.
Yes.
I apologize.
That's what's frustrating about it. That's what's frustrating about him, is because we see this from time to time and we're reminded of how good he is. And it was like, hey man, how come you don't do this every night? Like, we're waiting on you to do this all the time because we know that you're capable of it. We want you to do this all the time.
Yeah, so the job thing is like, he's been gone for 25 games, and you come back, you're like, oh yeah, I forgot. This dude is a monster. Like, this dude is a problem. Right? Like, and he started, I think he started with just like I don't remember what it was, but he started slow in that game. I was like, okay, cool. And then I look up and I just see that point total ticking up. And I see that, I look up at the score, the game, and I'm like, oh, he is getting to the rack, baby. He is jumping out the gym again. And so it's like, it for me, the big takeaway on that was like, yo, just remember how good he is. In fact, like, it brought back to memory, oh yeah, that's right. There was a point where we were thinking about him as like the greatest American player in the game right now. That's right. I forgot. Yeah, my bad. Right. And it's just like, you've been outside of public view, and some of that is,
or at least the face of American basketball in that way. Because I think that's where he was starting to get to. Yeah. We have all the international stars with Giannis and Joel Embiid, Luka Doncic, even Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. But the face of American basketball, it felt like the track was going toward, hey, Ja, you're going to be the face of this because of how, not only how dynamic you are on the floor, but you seem you got a pretty good personality off the floor as well that's marketable. And we want to push you as the face of American basketball. And it felt like once he got suspended, or all the stuff he started doing, that just went away rather quickly for him.
I do love that he was like, oh, the Pacers is the thing now. Like, it's like somebody who came back from a bid, right? And they were like, what's hot in these streets now? And he was like, oh, the Pacers is a thing. I'll show you something about the Pacers. Boom, got him.
Yeah, just like that. just like that.
And this is the thing, is like, he's doing this, remember, with the rest of the Grizzlies around him. Them other guys are depleted right now. They got Santi Aldama playing real minutes, right? Like, no, all due respect to Santi Aldama, right? But like, Brandon Clark, they're supposed to have, who's a big part of what they do. He gone. Steven Adams, they're supposed to have, who's a big part of what they do. He gone, right? Like, the Tyus Jones thing was supposed to be helpful. Obviously, they made that move. And they do have other pieces, but it's just like, this thing is not even as robust as it was before, because that was one of the things about the Grizzlies. They had a lot of young, talented dudes that they were getting in there. It's not as robust as it is before. It just speaks to just how much this league is a star-driven league, because he came back and it was like, back to business, boys. We back up, right? Put the open sign, turn the sign around, tell them we open.
I know Desmond Bay was like, finally, damn it, somebody else can do something. Hey, John, get back over here, man. So I go out and get back to shooting these 3-pointers in these corners and knocking down a bunch of threes all the time. I just find it so fascinating that his singular dominance is so dramatic for that team based on their personnel, but more importantly, how he quickly has just gotten back to, yep, this is what I do. This is how I do it. I was just waiting to get back. And now all of a sudden, look, I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. They got to play, I think, 600 basketball just to get to 500 to even have a shot, I think, to be realistically in that play-in, bottom, the sixth conversation to be in the playoffs. But I don't know if they even do that. But just watching him in these first 2 games reminded us, yep, this is why we love John Morant as a basketball player and what we thought he was capable of if he was with the Grizzlies throughout the beginning of this season. And they've been hurt too with Marcus Smart. They've been dealing with some injuries, there as well. But yeah, he has just come back with a vengeance. I just find it hilarious that he was yelling at us, talking about, hey man, got these. Look, I didn't believe that you weren't going to be good, Ja. I just didn't know when you was going to be coming back and how long you're going to stick around here so that we can enjoy how good you are actually as a player.
Also, KG, you realize that you and me to an extent are taking this from a logical place. And one thing we know about athletes, logic ain't got nothing to do with this. Because think about this, right? Ja's whole thing, the reason why he got in trouble was he was doing the most, right?
That's right.
And so in this time away, I imagine in order to try and get himself right, and if anybody around him is doing right by him, they've been putting the governor on it, right? Like, yeah, hey man, you can't do but so much.
That's right.
And in that time off, you don't think Ja just been in the gym working, thinking in his head, when I get back, I'm gonna prove.
Oh, this is what I could do when I'm not here acting, playing with guns on IG Live. I could be out here hooping all the time.
Right. I just imagine, even if he wasn't hooping, even if he was just sitting on his couch, he was just thinking, I'm gonna come back. When I get back, it's over for y'all. Creating a narrative that probably ain't true, right? Like they ain't want me to do it, right? Like on that DJ Khaled, like they trying to hold me back.
They're trying to hold me back,
right?
Hey man, we're not trying to hold you back. You the one out here holding yourself back.
And so the receipts are they said I couldn't do it, right? And
all of y'all. If
that's what it takes to get him dunking on all these other fools, do it. I'm with it.
That's one of my favorite things about just the athlete in general. Is the things
people. They're insane people. Yeah.
The things that they will conjure up to motivate themselves and then project onto us like we were the ones that caused whatever level of harm or discord that you feel that you need to take out on us because you was out here doing whatever you did. I just find athletes to be fascinating people. And you're right, in some ways insane, because to have the kind of level of dedication in order to be as disciplined as you are, sometimes you got to be just a little nuts to be out here doing some of the stuff that you're doing. Not to say that it's a bad thing, because there is a level of focus and drive that you have to get to the levels of this, especially the levels of greatness that some of these athletes have achieved, the 1%ers have achieved. But you got to be a little maniacal in some ways to be an athlete to get to those levels of greatness.
Yeah, no, you nailed it. You did nail it there. Yeah, I don't got anything else on that. I know that you're used to me just kind of having more. Nope. I think you did it.
You got that level of maniacal in you to be as great?
Absolutely. No, absolutely not. I'm wondering if I got the right level of maniacal to do the job I have right now. What are you talking about?
Oh man, before we get out of here today, obviously, and you talked about, this business in the way that, the level of dedication to do this business. How have you felt this business has changed in the years that because you've been in almost a decade yourself at this point? Like when you look around at how the media game has changed, the social media game that's changed in tandem with, with radio or podcasting and all the things that come with it, what for you has changed in the business in that way?
A lot. How much time do we have?
I know, right?
Let's see. The one that I will stick on, because there's a lot of different ways, right, that the business has changed. But the very basic one is that it's cheaper, right? And I mean that from all aspects. And that's not even really inherent to radio or media, right? It's just everywhere in the whole capitalism of this all. And I know that's everybody's ears and eyes is glazing over now. But like, look, man, the way that this thing is going, right, in order for you to deliver the the return to your stockholders, right? The stakeholders in whatever business that you have to continue to find a way to generate more income while lowering your costs. And after a while, it's going to get tougher and tougher to do that, and you continue to squeeze the work and try and like juice the profits. And those things are in some ways at odds, especially when it comes to media, in particular, because at least, and of course, the sports journalism part of this, or the sports part of this,
yes,
right, is not the important part of this particular thing I'm saying is, but like there is a particular ethos that is necessary in journalism where yes, it exists in this like this basic capitalistic economy, but at the same time there is like a public good portion of this. And so there in theory it was this idea that hey, this serves a different purpose, but ultimately it's now, you know, it's bowing to the mechanisms of, you know, this capitalistic endeavor of trying to extract as much value for your stock or your stakeholders, right?
mm-hmm.
And so you're seeing the squeeze on the ground level everywhere. You're seeing folks having to do more with less. And again, if you're hearing this and saying, well, that's my gig too, that's all of it, right? And so media is not anywhere removed from what this is. So the same feelings that you're feeling, there are people doing the work in media that are feeling the same thing. It's one of the things I like to say when people, you know, talk about it and they're like, hey man, you have such a great job. And it's like, in a way, yes, I understand what they're saying. But the thing
mm-hmm.
the thing that jumps to mind first is like, hey man, it's work, right? Work is work. Right? There are days where I go in and I'm excited to do my job. And I know some people for work, not exactly that. My condolences to you. But there are days that I go in, I don't want to go to work, right? Like I want to be anywhere but. And so like these things are also media is also subject to these things. And I think that's one of the places where it's changed in the same ways that we're seeing all of these stories. If you are like someone who keeps up with the news, right?
Mm-hmm,
All these
mm-hmm.
stories when it comes to the way the businesses are kicking in and all those things. Media is dealing with those same exact things. And we've seen things like a big brand like Sports Illustrated. They used to be
yes,
a tower in this industry has been sold off for parts and brought down to where its name is not worth anything, to the point where there can be stories put out about how they is trying to use AI to game y'all and think that they still using real people. And you trying to tell me that that's not about squeezing costs, right?
Ooh,
like
boy,
so that's one of the places where this media industry has gotten tough. But another way is that also like there's the legacy thing is also getting squeezed by folks who are doing their own personal content creation, right? Like, and so that has been democratized in a way, but that also means that there's so much more out there.
Yes.
And so another way that this has changed is that you are not just operating, like for me, I'm not just operating radio, or, you know, you're not just operating a TV. Everybody is just operating in the nebulous content. And so you're
content creation.
You're competing so much wider than just where you previously were. And so those are some of the things that change. And of course, it would not be me if there was not kind of like a negative perspective on it, if it was not pseudo intellectual, and if it was not me talking about capitalism. So there you go.
Well, this is why I love you, and this is why we're having conversations like this, because that's part of the reasons, you know, why I think there's so much diversity when it comes to thought, when it comes to subjects like this, because there are different angles and multiple ways of looking at it, whether it be from certain aspects of it from a capitalistic standpoint, or from the standpoint of there are so many different ways that you've got to be creative in this space, because you can get your own content out in a way, whether it be podcasting, video, all the different mediums that are out there, that it has fractured in a lot of ways the ways that people get their information. So with especially when you can look, I got a microphone and a computer and a program, and I can disseminate content anytime at any place that I want to, whether I'm sitting here in my home office or I'm halfway around the world, and I don't have to have a lot of money to do it. It has just made different ways to get information out a lot more, I won't say difficult for people who are trying to do it in a quote unquote professional space, but the traditional tracks of how to get there, you don't necessarily have to follow that in order to get to certain places. Now, the road will be a little bit more difficult. But at the same time, if you don't, there isn't that dead end as far as you can only get to a certain point. No, you can get to, you know, real significant points in this business, no matter where you start. if you're willing to continue to keep going in that way based off of what you feel like you're capable of, talents, all those things, but also, you know, catching a break or two every now and then.
Well, there's something interesting in what you said, because you said like there isn't a dead end. And I would actually argue that there are a lot more dead ends in certain ways, because, right, like the idea, and this, again, this tracks a lot further in the, you know, I guess the economy of America, is that there was a point in time in this country where you could start in the broom closet of a company and work your way up all the way up, right? Like the ladder in companies simply does not exist. And that also tracks to radio. There was a point in time where you could start at a low rung and you could work your way up. You could be an on-air personality, right? And that is becoming harder and harder to do in some ways, because, again, the investment to develop is not something that is wanted to be made, right? Like that is seen as, in some ways, and I guess I can't speak indefinite, but I imagine that is seen as an unnecessary cost, when in all reality, again, there are all these people doing their own development, right? And we see this in sports as well, right? Organizations are less likely to pay for development if folks are going to go and like do the development on their own, because they're making this, because this is so competitive. So if I can go out there and just look around and see somebody has already developed the thing, right? And when I say develop, I don't just mean like an individual developing their talent. If somebody already has like a podcast that is a full-blown show, hello, Pat McAfee, I don't have to develop a concept. I can go pluck the concept. I could pluck the concept fully formed, as opposed to having to nurture it, plant it, water it, and grow it. I can just go get it fully formed and put it on my platform. And so in a way, if you are thinking about doing this in the media space or in anywhere else where you are simply trying to rise up the ladder, the ladder ain't there, buddy, right? It is more about, can you put this thing together and have a package fully formed that somebody looks up and says, I need.
Yeah, and creating it on your own, because the Pat McAfee show is a terrific example of that. It was an organic program that he built. He built an organic following, and all of a sudden, you know, it's on Sirius. It's on, obviously, you know, starting it on YouTube, and then ESPN's like, oh, this is worth $85 million to us to invest into Pat McAfee, to bring him on and his entire crew and everything else that comes with it. Okay, yeah, sure, we'll do that, and we'll say, unfortunately, goodbye to whomever in order to make this happen, because it's kind of that 80-20 rule. The idea being that 20% of the people doing, or whatever the rules, I can't do math. You get the idea. That 20%
I don't even know
of the
what
people,
the 80-20 rule is. So
that 20% of the people do 100% of the work. And it feels like ESPN, just to use an example, is using that. Hey, man, Stephen A. Smith, Shannon Sharp, Pat McAfee, name your other few personnel, Scott Van Pelt, who's working like a dog these days as well.
Right.
Y'all get out here and produce all this content, and we're going to pay you a lot of money to do it, but we're also going to work you like crazy. And again, the industry itself, while it's really cool to be in, there's a lot of work that goes into being really good at this. And then when you find individuals as talented as some of those that I've named, and then you decide that they have the work ethic to push your product and they're willing to do it, you're going to have to pay those people, but they're also going to be working like crazy. And I think ESPN has kind of fallen to some of that as well.
Oh boy, I just thought of something that could take us a little long here. But look,
let's go. It's my birthday. It's my show.
Yeah, that's
people
fair
are here.
enough.
Let's talk about it.
I guess I got to give you my time. This, the interesting connection that I thought is like we are seeing that also in sports, and particularly in basketball, is one of the places where I thought about it, is like the idea of this is all a factor of like trying to maximum efficiency everything. And so in the instances where you're seeing all of the resources, kind of consolidated in one place, where, okay, let's take it like Luka Doncic or a player like that. We are just going to throw all of our resources in this, usage and money and all these things in the thing that we know is going to work, right? And the thing that we know that we can bank on. Boom, we got that. Everywhere else, we're going to go as cheap as we can or whatever, right? Like we're just going to go bank, and we're going to like throw the darts on the board, right? We're going to get a whole bunch of tickets. And one of the things that I was talking about with CA actually, I think yesterday, was the idea of, in basketball, where's your vet, right? And this actually ties back to Zion. It ties back to Ja, right? At some point, we had in basketball in particular, the role of veteran players that added value somewhat on the court, but also off of the court. And so there was an idea of, there's a culture that is built here by having folks that are vets, right? Institutional knowledge continues through. veterans, and just knowing how to do this, right? Knowing how to be a pro is part of it. But then also like knowing the other stuff, right? And I mentioned Zion, I mentioned Ja, I mentioned Anthony Edwards, because you see all them things that popped up, and we don't have to get into them things that popped up, but them things that popped up, and the immediate thing that I thought is like, where's your vet, right? Who's the person that grabs you aside and says, hey, young buck, this is how we do things in the league, right? And not even just like you go to practice like, hey man, when you go to certain cities, they're gonna be waiting. This is where they're waiting. This is what they're doing, right? When you do certain things, hey, this is how you make it shake, right? And of course, some of this is just like the world is different. And I wonder how much vets could even help you, because like the world that them vets came up in is not the world that we have right now, especially like when you're just the rapidly changing ways of social media and everything. Like a 15-year vet in this league has seen rapid changes of the ways, of the things that you can get away with and all those things. But like, there's a lot of times where I go, where's your vet? And the problem is the ways that we've decided to build teams have completely iced them out, because the vets are going to cost more, and if they are not giving you as much as you can get from a rookie, I'm gonna go with the rookie that costs less and that maybe we have upside on, except you're missing that other like value of it. And it feels like there's something lost, but I can't tell you specifically that like it's better or worse somewhat, but you're just missing some things. And that also tracks back to media, and it tracks back to all these other businesses where the way that you're going about this, you're losing stuff in your pursuit to gain more efficiency.
Yeah, you're losing value based off of trying to create maximum profits while not having as many people do the work, or finding cheap labor, hello NCAA, to do the work for you and not pay them sufficiently for the work that they're actually doing, but still trying to maximize your ability to create, whether it be engagement, money, or otherwise. And I think part of that is also what happened in the NFL when we looked at how the NFL went and looked at, say, hey, let's find us a rookie quarterback who's cheap, who's really good, and then build everything else around him. And hopefully we can win a Super Bowl in between the time that he gets from year 1 to 5, and then go from there. Otherwise, by the time we have to get to this 5th year, we're probably having to pay him and then move on from there. But I think some of that speaks to the idea of how cheap can we do this? Can we maximize profit and efficiency while also trying to ensure that X person in the NBA, in this case, has enough maturity and growth that we can project that we won't have to spend money on a Udonis Haslem or someone of that nature to protect young said kid from the perils of the NBA, because we feel like we can do this at a little bit cheaper cost without having to spend money in certain aspects.
But let me tell you, the cost that Mickey Aram, that's his name, that's
Mickey Arison,
Arison, there we go. Mickey Arison does not regret one bit is paying Udonis Haslem's salary all the way through. Like, he does not regret that one bit, right? The whole the whole heat culture thing, Udonis Haslem has a good stake in that. I can't put a number on it, but a good stake in it. I do want to kind of push back on the idea, like the quarterback thing feels a little different, because we have not pushed out necessarily the vet in that space because of the unique nature of the quarterback position, and there's just not enough people that are good at it.
Not enough good ones, yeah.
So you can still see a Teddy Bridgewater kind of hang around in certain ways. Like, that's the place. The place where it is interesting in football is like the second contract contract linebacker, right? Like there's the middle
or
of the
running
road
back.
there, or bro, the running back is just the worst part of this per se. But like, the places where there's not like crazy scarcity. Because line, you're also going to see crazy scarcity, and you can hang around as long as you can, as long as you can play. There's certain places where that value proposition of, do we really want to pay you on a veteran contract, or just go get a new one? Yeah. Right? It's kind of like the ultimate American culture of disposability, where it's just like, yo, why would I pay for this average, linebacker, this average whatever you have, when I could just go get a new one? And so I think that's where you see that squeeze. And honestly, that's one of those things that it's one of the many things that the players union has to try and contend with, but you can only address so many people's interests, and you have literally thousands of different players, but like you have a lot of different types of players that you have to pull together and get in one accord and try and address all their interests in some ways, while also already being at a disadvantage when it comes to the ownership that has 31 of those that are all likely fairly similar because they're rich people. And so like their interests are largely aligned. They don't have a half-life on, or a shelf life rather, on their ownership, on their earning potential. And so it's really tough. And so that's one of the reasons why we're in this place, but it does suck that we're ultimately there.
This has been so much fun. I've had such a good time, and I'm so glad that this came together the way that I intended it to on my birthday on this show. And I'm glad that you were able to spend some time with me today. Reg, tell the folks where they can find you and what you got going on, man.
You just gonna command me like I'm a jukebox?
That's right.
That's
please,
crazy, bro.
Please,
Why don't you tell them where they can find me, huh?
No, this is not. This is the portion where you promote yourself. This is the portion of the program where you do that.
I do the Get Right, 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. on 105 through the Fan, Monday through Friday. And I guess you can find me on social media. Not that I really want you to find me on social media. At Reggie Adetula on Twitter, and I don't know.
You got another podcast too that you do, as well.
Yeah, you can catch me usually on Sunday Mondays for the Locked On Mavs podcast. See, this is the thing. You know it. Why are you making me say it?
Because I want you to say it. I want them to come watch you and listen to you and all of your incredible insight in the world of basketball, sports, and everything else in between.
That's cute. I just be talking.
Yeah.
Really?
I appreciate you. Look, now if you're committed to this, now you're gonna do this every Friday. Now,
every Friday?
Is that a thing for us now?
We'll talk.
Okay, cool. All right, cool. Sound like you got to go. Sound like there's things happening in your space. Okay. This has been the Gray Area Live podcast. I really appreciate my man Reg Adetula for joining me here on today's show. If you missed it here on YouTube Live, you could go back and watch it, and you can listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcast for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Give the podcast a 5-star rating, write a review for it. We really appreciate that, to tell other people about the Gray Area podcast. My name is Kevin Gray. I'll be off on Monday because the thing called Christmas is on Monday, so I won't talk to you Monday, but I will talk to you on Wednesday to recap a massive weekend in the NFL, a lot of things going on in the NBA, and here's some of your stories about what happened for you during Christmas. So I'll talk to you on Wednesday. Enjoy the rest of your holiday, and I'll talk to you then. Peace.